And there is an awful lot to talk about. We had the Tory manifesto yesterday. We played out a lot of that live to you yesterday. We told you what was actually being announced as it was being announced. But it didn't really set the world alight, and the latest polls have shown that, well, admittedly, the information done before the manifesto was launched, that actually the Tories are now, well, being crept up on by Reform UK. They're just 1 point behind them in the polls. Well, we'll talk about that and plenty more with all of our top guests throughout the show, including one Benedict Spence, Conservative commentator, who joins us in the studio. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Lovely to have you here. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. I want to ask you, first of all, about the Tory manifesto launch. One, did you pay attention to it? Two, were you very excited by it, and does it change anything?
No, and no.
OK, let's
really
move on.
Really easy show
Next
today.
Story. And this is the thing. A manifesto launch is very, very, very big deal for the the newspapers. They're all over the front pages today, but they don't really change a lot of things, and also because actually an awful lot of what is in manifestos is nearly always announced in advance, as one would expect it to be.
Yes, that's why one doesn't actually need to pay that much attention to it. There's the occasional sort of rabbit out of the hat.
Shouldn't be a complete surprise, should it?
No, there is the occasional sort of surprise, but that'll be reported anyway. And ultimately, a lot of the policies, certainly that the Conservatives are promising, have been sort of in circulation for some time. Indeed, they've often been sort of circulated before budgets and things like that,
yes,
and then they never come to fruition. And the problem that the Tories have, and this is why it doesn't change anything, is you could offer people anything right now. The public, broadly, don't trust this government to deliver on anything that they promise.
They don't appear to be listening very much, I have to say. I mean, we're talking about a lot of tax cuts. National insurance going down, so that'd be the third 2 pence cut in employee national insurance. Big battles over who's going to cost more, the Tories or Labour under the next Parliament. The reality is, if you listen to the people who actually understand these numbers, and the Institute of Fiscal Studies, I think pretty much do, Paul Johnson and others there are saying very, very simply, whoever's in power, your taxes are going to go up, or you're going to see massive cuts in public spending.
Yeah.
And since the public don't want massive cuts in public spending, and anyone who's claiming they're going to, simplify taxes, deal with tax evasion, tax avoidance, not evasion, tax avoidance, and tackle public sector inefficiencies. If they claim that they're getting all the extra money they need from those things, they're also lying to you.
Yeah, it's a lie. That's nobody's surprised by that anymore, though, is it? Honestly, though, it's so very frustrating that we find ourselves in a position where, because of anemic economic growth, almost nothing to write home about.
No, I don't know. There can't be anemic economic growth because we've had mass immigration for 20 years and we've been told that immigration is very, very good for the economy. So that simply can't be true.
Well, Julia, today we discovered that the economy has not grown, so you can imagine that right now in the Treasury they are breaking the in case of emergencies more migrants alarm.
That is their solution to everything.
It is, and that's their solution, even though over the last 12 months GDP per head, that's to say how wealthy people are, shrank
on average.
0.7%. It shrank at about 3.5 times the rate at which the economy supposedly grew.
By the way, even when it goes up, actually, it's an average. And actually, there are some people who benefit and some people who don't. One of the reasons I voted for Brexit was because actually the people I felt needed the most help. I didn't need any help. I was doing all right. I do perfectly fine under being in the EU. I'm absolutely fine. Eastern European nannies, lovely job. It makes no, get builders, lovely. It's the fact that, of course, that impacts the people doing those jobs and all the other service industry and every other job, ability to get housing and lower incomes and things. And I don't think you should always be voting for the stuff that benefits you, especially if you're one of the people who's been lucky enough to do well in life. But this is the thing. All these figures, and when the Prime Minister, when he answering questions at Silverstone Racetrack yesterday and all the debates and he's going to do, when they talk about these sort of stats, when they talk about, but on average, and Grant Shapps out doing the rounds this morning, it's Grant Shapps, Melstrade, then Grant Shapps again, then Melstrade. They only trust two people to do it. Sunak largely hiding, and when he does come out, he makes let's face it, a balls up of it. He really does. He can't do politicking, that's for sure. Is that they're in a situation where they talk about things in very sort of number crunching-y, accountant-y ways, ignoring what the reality is for people, what it feels like when you go to the supermarket and you're going, how much? I don't have enough for that. And also when you're thinking, it's June, it's actually rather chilly, but no way we can't afford to put the heating on.
I mean, people are not stupid. They recognise that they are now poorer. And
I think
I've been saying that
politicians think that they are stupid. I think genuinely lots of politicians think that the British people are stupid and will fall for stuff like this.
Do you know what? It's tricky. I think a lot of politicians are terrified about being honest with people because they fear the wrath of when you are honest to people, that people go, well, I don't like that, so I'm going to vote for something else, which is not an unfounded fear. Actually, people do vote for that.
David Cameron, early in his Tory leadership, when Blair was in power, would have been Blair? No, Gordon Brown. Gordon Brown, yeah. He so many prime ministers in recent years, and they actually did put out a policy where they were going to say, well, lots of stuff that needs fixing. We're going to raise certain taxes. Plummeted down in the polls, dropped that policy, went back up. Ta-da. I've always said, the British people don't like politicians who are honest with them.
Well, when Theresa May decided she was going to be honest and give people a difficult policy on when it came to paying for social care, that nearly did for her as well. And again, this is why I always say, you get the country you deserve. If you want to keep voting for fantasies, fine, but fantasies very rarely come to fruition. And even when they do, there's usually, a moral to the fairy tale.
Yeah, well, that's, £17 billion tax cut from Rishi Sunak. He's also vowed to get Rwanda flights in the air next month, saying within days if the Conservatives return to office. Well, why can't they do it before July the 4th? They said early July, but also promising to halve legal migration. Again, could have done that already instead of letting it go up, because legal migration, by definition, you're able to control because you hand out the visas. It shouldn't be a surprise to you when 750,000 people turn up in it every year. And, well, in fact, get more than leave. I mean, the net migration, it's more than 1 million who turned up. But also basically saying that he's going to deport 100,000 illegal migrants, so the channel boat migrants and the lorry migrants, under the Rwanda plan, either to Rwanda or other countries. I mean, does anyone believe a word of that, realistically?
Nobody does, and they're right not to, because the evidence is there in front of your face. These people don't get deported. The government has had the powers. They're not going to invent new powers to do this. They've got the mechanisms to do it. They choose not to. And again, it's as with so many other facets of the state that are crumbling, different things that don't work, they will tell you it is because of a lack of staffing, a lack of resources, X, Y, Z, which is why, of course, as you said, your taxes are probably going to have to go up, because in order to perform the basic functions of government, our government now needs to do that, because it's unable to do it with the resources that it has, or at least within the parameters that it sets itself. Of course, we all know it could streamline the civil service, it could streamline all sorts of things, make them efficient, but it doesn't want to do that. Just
sack the ones who don't get anything done. We're gonna look at you for the next 2 weeks. We want to see every single thing you've done, and if you've not done enough, we're going to sack you. It's what happens not everywhere in the private sector. I've worked in enough offices where no one gets anything done.
Yeah, but this is the point. Remember, the state does not exist to make your life easier. It exists to make jobs and work for itself so that it can perpetuate. And that is the way that the British state works.
And that's what we've got to change, isn't it? Let's also talk about another woe for Rishi Sunak. The latest YouGov poll puts Reform just 1 percentage point behind the Tories. Interestingly, actually, we've got the Lib Dems creeping up as well. The YouGov survey for Sky News puts Reform UK on 17%. That's up 1 from last week. Perhaps we would have expected it to go up higher post the D-Day debacle, which we'll get to. Conservatives down 1 on 18%. Labour 20-point lead on 38%, but they did drop 3 points. So again, and one would have expected that as people are starting paying attention to other parties. Lib Dems, though, up 4 points in fourth place with 15%. The Greens, who are launching their manifesto today, on 8%. SNP, obviously only available in Scotland, on 2%. But 1 point behind Nigel Farage. I mean, bearing in mind, they've only just sort of kind of started. We'll see what goes there. We're going to talk to Reform UK's now chairman, former leader, Richard Tice, in a few moments' time. So just wondering briefly your thoughts on that. How much of a danger is that? And especially when you've got the Prime Minister saying, and this is the question I'd like to ask the audience today, he's warning that a vote for Reform UK or the Lib Dems, because it's different appeal in different constituencies, could put Keir Starmer in power for a decade. I want to know, does that worry you? Is that a concern? Tell us why it is. Tell us why it isn't. You can give us a call, 0344 499 1000. You can send a WhatsApp to the same number. Set text on 87222. Get in touch on X at TalkTV. Calls to charge at the national rate. Text cost 1. Standard network rate message. So do you think that?
Well, that it'll put them in power for a decade.
Do you think it'll put them in power for a decade? And does it worry you at all?
No, because I don't think they are going to be in power for a decade, and therefore it doesn't worry me. Although I do think that the defeat that the Labour Party will probably suffer in 5 years' time, given the speed and size at which they are going to get this majority, I think that when people have sat under 5 years of a government that is unable to improve on the current situation, and they realise, oh my word, it's possibly just as bad, if not worse. I think that potential collapse could be equally as catastrophic. I think when people realise, wow, we really have been sold downriver by both major parties, that is perhaps more what worries me. Honestly, if Labour do win in 5 years' time, they'll have probably done quite a good job relative to what people imagine. So actually,
We've got low expectations.
Yeah, that doesn't necessarily worry me, because it might mean that they got a few things right ultimately. Because otherwise, I do think they are going to really struggle in 5 years.
Well, I'll tell you someone who can't seem to do anything right at the moment, and that is Rishi Sunak. Now, of course, we all know the fallout from him leaving D-Day early. Yeah, you know, the commemorations in France. He did all day in Britain on the Wednesday. He did all the events involving British veterans, yes, on the Thursday. I'm going to be fair to the guy, but he chose, for some bizarre reason, to think that when all the global leaders were standing there for the major ceremony that was going to be beamed around the world, that he would leave early early to attend an ITV interview that wasn't going to be aired until today. Well, there's going to be interviewed tonight, this one-on-one interview between ITV's Paul Brand and Rishi Sunak, and we've had some clips come out, and it's already looking really bad. And actually, I mean, really is. He's just digging his own hole tonight. In this ITV Tonight interview, Rishi Sunak arrives. Now, I will clarify, he knew he was being filmed. It was agreed in advance that him walking into the room to see the report would be filmed. So it wasn't outrageous for them to put it out. It would have been otherwise, I think. But he knew he was being filmed. He knew he was mic'd up. And this is what he had to say, Rishi Sunak, as he arrived at that interview, having left D-Day commemoration events early.
Prime Minister.
Gosh, hello.
Good to see you.
Very nice to see you. Hey, sorry to have
Well,
kept
thanks.
you.
No, not at all. I know you've been in Normandy.
Yeah, it all just ran over. It was incredible, but it just ran over.
Now, all very well. He's apologising for being late, but he's saying the events ran over. Yeah, thing is, there's a dinner running over. There's some conference running over. It was D-Day commemoration events that ran over. Was that appropriate? I mean, is he just digging himself deeper in?
I think that sort of off-the-cuff remark, he might have even thought in the moment that he said it, oh, that might have not been the right thing to say, because he might not have thought about it. Yes, possibly the sort of thing that he would recognise. But of course, if he knows it's being filmed, and he then realises, oh, I've just said that, oh, I'm being filmed, you can't then turn around and be like, oh, what am I saying? Because then you make yourself look like a bit more of an idiot. I just think, broadly speaking, this is a government that cares so much about optics and is so bad at it.
Yes.
And this is the thing that I think they were thinking about this whole thing is, because it's not about Rishi Sunak, but it is about everybody else, and there's going to be the king and other heads of state, but it's largely going to be a silent thing. There's not going to be an opportunity for sort of tap thinking. You might almost be able to be missed because more important people will be saying
there. Except, of course, the king had left because the king has been having cancer treatment. I mean, again, no one would have an issue with that.
Yeah.
Let's look at another clip again that's also being put out by the ITV team about this interview, and this is when the Prime Minister is being pushed about his background. Of course, he's richer than the king. We know from the latest Sunday Times rich list. I don't personally think that we should criticise someone whose parents worked hard and put him to a good school, and who's undoubtedly he's very brilliant. He's worked very hard and he's done very well in life. He also had the fortune of falling in love with a very, very, very wealthy woman. I mean, who wouldn't want to do that?
What was it first attracted you to the billionaire heiress?
No, but who wouldn't want to do that, people? Come on. But unfortunately, this whole exchange went, I think, pretty horribly wrong. Let's have a watch and a listen.
Have you ever gone without something?
Yeah, I mean, my family emigrated here with very little. And that's how I was raised. I was raised with the values of hard work.
Can you give me an example of
all sorts of things. So, like lots of people, there'll be all sorts of things that I would have wanted as a kid that I couldn't have, right? Famously, Sky TV.
So, famously, Sky TV. He's obviously mentioned this in a previous interview. He didn't have Sky when he was a kid. Look, lots of parents scrimp and save to prioritise the things that matter to them, whether it's sending their kid to private school if they can afford it, or other things that they value rather than having stuff they don't value, like, for instance, in that case, Sky TV. Is this a fair criticism? I mean, it's bad politics from him because it's got bad, a lot of people go, really, that's the hardest in life? But there are millions of people in this country who didn't suffer as children. I didn't suffer as children. We didn't have a load of money. We didn't go without. I'm sorry, I don't think most people do. go without, actually, in this country, because people who've got two parents who work hard, the immigrant parents who worked hard and were professional, and do we require people to have had a when Keir Starmer says, my dad was a toolmaker, your dad ran a factory. You never went without on a single day. Let's stop. I mean, I know people in my own family who went hungry at the weekend because there was no money. Who did a good milk round, a coal round, and a paper round to pay money into the when they were a teenager, so there was money, there was food to eat. So I'm sorry, but that wasn't my experience. So what? I can never go into politics because my parents had worked hard and did well?
Well, exactly. It's the sort of the Vietnam veteran, you don't know, you weren't there kind of approach to politics, and that's a bad way of doing anything in life. Because by that way, there'd been no progress anywhere. But you're right, terrible politics, because again, the politicians do not trust the public to actually treat them on face value and say, look, I'm not like you, but here's my track record on X, Y, Z, and this is what I'm going to do. Ultimately, I actually feel sort of almost sorry for him, because he's reached into something that is clearly a childhood gripe. Famously, it's probably something that he went to a very good school. He didn't get it. It stuck in his mind. It's not the stock answer.
But it wasn't. But again, he was being pushed and pushed and pushed. He should have. David Cameron was always very clear. I was very lucky. I was very privileged. I was very lucky. I want everyone else to have the same privilege. That's the answer. But he's not a good politician.